Hello and welcome to the 741 channel. Thank you for stopping by. Today we're going to take a look at mounting this older Yakima bike rack to my 2004 Chevy Tahoe. So I've been thinking about picking one of these up for my Tahoe for a while now, but when I started looking at the cost of new ones, I got sticker shock. So I ended up turning to Craigslist and I found this one for sale just a couple of miles away. So of course, being used, this thing isn't perfect. It's got some cosmetic issues here up at the top where the bikes were kind of scraped on and off of it, and there's a little bit of rust down here where this thing was inside of the previous owner's trailer hitch. But I couldn't beat the price, so I ended up picking it up, and here it is. Let's take a look at it. So here's a closer look at the rack and what I got with it. You can see the previous owner had it set up for just two bikes, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but these saddles are kind of scarred up a little bit from use. But he did give me the other two saddle sets that'll go on there. You may also be able to see here the paint is kind of scraped off up here a little bit from probably sliding this thing on and off, or maybe a bike fell off of this and scraped against there at some point. I'm not sure, but either way, that's just cosmetic. Everything seems to be like it's in pretty good condition otherwise. Okay, taking a closer look at the hitch end here, you can see that this is the style that kind of pivots out of the way. It still has its locking clip and a wire to keep it from being lost. And then you can see this is the end that goes into the hitch. And you can see there's a little bit of surface rust on here, probably from being inside of a hitch for a while. No issue there, that's all just cosmetic. Now you can see there's no hardware missing or anything like that. Everything is in good shape. So let's get ready to put this thing on my Tahoe. The first thing I'm going to do is pull this cotter pin off the end and then unthread this bolt. And now I'll set this aside for a moment. So next up, we'll just slide this into the hitch on the back of the Tahoe, and we'll get the hole where the bolt goes through lined up to the hole in my hitch. Next up, I'll take the cotter pin back off the end of the bolt here, and I'll thread it in to the hole. Now I've got that just finger tight, and now what I'll do is snug it up with this 7/8 wrench here. And then we'll put the cotter pin back on the other side of the bolt. And there's a close-up look at the cotter pin on the end of the bolt. Alright, so I'm going to try and put the first bike on the rack here. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the first bike on. So as you can see, I had a little trouble clearing this saddle. Now the easier thing to do would have been to remove the two screws that are below these red end caps, pull the saddles off, and put the bike on by itself. So now what I'll do is use one of these hold down straps to secure the bike to the saddle. So you can see that the saddle has these ovoid shaped ears on it, and you just basically loop these holes around the ears and then bring it around and kind of like a bungee, just pull it into place and wrap it around the opposite one. You can see here on this back saddle there's a pivot to kind of go against the upright tube. So what I'll do is put one of the straps here on the top saddle like I did in the front. And then for some added security, we can go around this back saddle as well. So next up, let's try putting my wife's bike up on here now. Hers is a women's style bike, so it's going to be a little trickier to get it hooked on here, I think. It actually looks like her bike will go on here okay, but this saddle is sort of backwards for the way that I've got it on here. So I'm going to do like I mentioned a minute ago, and I'm going to pull this end cap off and we'll spin that saddle around. Okay, let's try that. I've got her bike on here and I think it's going to be okay. Now you can see this part of the saddle is really not useful in this configuration, although I can kind of jam it up there and keep the tire from moving. So that may actually be useful, but really I probably could have done without it, at least in this configuration. Okay, so I'll put a few straps on here now and get this thing secured. Let's get this end cap back on here now. Okay, so I've got the end cap back on. The bikes are all strapped down, and I think we're good to go. So the rack itself seems to kind of move around on the vehicle here a little more than I would expect it to, especially in the kind of up and down direction. So maybe going over bumpy roads, these things would kind of take a little bit of a beating. I don't think they'd fall off of here. I think they're on here pretty secure, but things are going to kind of bounce around a bit on a bumpy road. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this bike rack does have the pivot feature, which is nice on a vehicle like this because we should be able to pivot this thing down and still open the hatch. Let's give it a try. So I have to kind of sneak under the bikes here, and then I'll just pull out this locking clip. Now I got to kind of push forward on that to relieve the tension. I'll set that aside. Now I'll kind of stand up and then let these pivot down. And of course, with the bikes down and out of the way, you can open the hatch without any issue at all. So now that we have the hatch open, you can see I've got my son's bike here. I can throw this in the back. Maybe easier said than done with these two back seats in here. Now the reason I'd need to throw this in the back instead of putting it on the rack is that this doesn't fit the rack. This frame on his bike is just too small to fit over the tines on the rack in a manner that allows me to strap it down securely. Okay, let's see how difficult it is to pivot this back up and put it back in place. Okay, that ought to do it. That's pretty much going to wrap things up for this Yakima bike rack that I picked up from Craigslist and mounted on my 2004 Chevy Tahoe. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. And if you'd like to support my channel in another way, please consider visiting my Amazon store, which you'll find a link to in the description below. Thanks for watching!